Hello and welcome to the Methodist Podcast, this edition published on the 25th of June 2020. This week is of course the Methodist Conference, and we'll be talking to the current President and Vice President on their year in office. We talk twinning, we learn about the Methodist Youth Brass Band, and we meet a man who's virtually walking the entire length of the country. The Methodist Conference is the governing body of the Methodist Church and meets annually. Of course, this year things are rather different, and the conference is meeting online with a small number of key staff based at Cliff College in Derbyshire, beaming this very different conference around the connection and around the world. The Reverend Dr. Barbara Glasson is the president of the Methodist Conference and has almost reached the end of her year in office, and she joins me from Cliff College. Hello, Barbara. What do you think John Wesley would have made of an online Methodist conference?
Who can read the mind of John Wesley? I mean, he was a man of his time, and he did want to be with the people, didn't he? And he wanted to enable the people to be the best they could be, and to live whole lives, and to flourish. He wanted that deeply. I think this is a pragmatic solution, and he would approve of a pragmatic solution. And John wasn't always the best people person, in his own personal relationships. So maybe being behind a screen might have suited his disposition. But I think really it's a contingency, and it's not where we need to be long term. And I think he wants us to be with the people. He wants us to be with ordinary people that are struggling. And not in a virtual way, but in a roll up your sleeves and be with these people way. And I hope he doesn't hold it against us for doing this. But I'm sure he would see that we're doing our best in the circumstances, and that doing it this way is to help people stay well. And I'm sure he'd approve of that bit.
12 months ago, when you set out on your journey as the president of the Methodist Conference, what were your hopes and ambitions for the year?
Well, I don't think I had any ambitions as such. Hopes were a bit hazy. Obviously, Clive and I had written the book, and we were looking to engage with stories, people's stories, our story, the gospel story, and really wanting to make visits and go places where we heard stories and got a wider perspective of the church. Well, not just the church, actually how the church is relating to the world. And I actually have to say that has happened to a greater extent, because our year started, in the previous year. So we've really had a good 18 months of doing that. And in the previous year, I'd been to Myanmar and Bangladesh. That was a massive trip, emotionally and personally. And then we went together to Zimbabwe. And then in the presidential year, I went to the West Bank. And the last thing I did before lockdown was to go to Argentina. So, if you just put those into 18 months, that's a huge amount of stories and storytelling. And of course, there's been this wonderful kind of mix of visiting ordinary Methodists in kind of ordinary places, doing ordinary things, and then going to the cenotaph for, the Remembrance Day service. And one of the things I was dreading was going to the cenotaph. I had my white poppy in my pocket, because I thought I don't want to be part of this stuff. But actually, I wore my white poppy, and I was with people of other faiths standing at the cenotaph, and it was hugely moving, and I was glad to be part of that in the end. So that was a surprise.
What do you think the impact of your year in office is going to have on you personally and professionally?
I've realised that it's been good to work as a team with Clive. It's been good to have the privilege of meeting different people and seeing the faithfulness of good Methodist people all over the place doing all sorts of stuff. I mean, things that will stay with me are the work of the Whitechapel Mission with the homeless. They feed breakfasts, and every day, hundreds in a week to the homeless of London. Also in Clacton, the Deacon Janet Jenkins there, working with the street homeless there. Just phenomenal what the Methodist people are doing. And I think, don't be coy about that. Tell the story about that. Because and we beat ourselves up a lot about the things we don't do right. And, we don't do everything right. But some things we do really, really well, and we should be proud of it. And I'm proud of the Methodist Church for what we do really well. Because we have a go at stuff. Well, I think we're pragmatic people. We roll our sleeves up and have a go at stuff. That's good. I think I've realised I need to resource myself again. I feel that there's a lot of give in the presidential year. People are very generous and they give, their hospitality and time. I appreciate that. But we also have to be on the front foot and give a lot. And I need to resource myself again. And so I'm grateful for the presidential year. It's not been the pinnacle of my ministry. It's been my most recent appointment. And I've enjoyed it, and it's been good, and it's been a privilege, and it's parts I've loved and parts I've found more challenging. But it's not the be-all and end-all of who I am.
Having been through your year, what advice would you give to Richard and Carolyn, the upcoming President and Vice President, for them to take forward for their year in office?
Well, Richard and Carolyn have got a very different year, haven't they? Because they're starting in lockdown, and I feel sorry for them, really, because their plans and anticipation, can't be realised, at least, at the beginning. But I think my advice would be, God has called you. The church has recognised in you something that is for this time, and you might not be able to discern what it is yourself, but the Methodist people want you to do this work. And so to be confident and to be courageous and prophetic, speak out, but also be authentic to who you are. You don't have to be a kind of plaster model of a president. You just have to be yourself being the president. And it's a calling, and live it and enjoy it.
Clive Marsh is Vice President of the Methodist Conference, and I asked him for the highlights from his year in office.
The off the top of the head response is a visit to RAF bases in Lincolnshire, which I would never have expected to say, but the visits there were so fascinating from the point of view of just the incredibly professional work that people are doing there, and they were just informing us about aspects of life in the RAF and the sheer brilliance of their technical ability, and obviously what they're doing for the sake of the country's security. And it was quite a challenge, because there were people in those roles that we met working in the RAF, people of faith and people of no faith. So forcing us to ask, those of us who were visiting, how does faith kind of interweave with the work that they're doing for the RAF? And also those sometimes of no faith who may look with a little bit of bemusement on how faith might, or how we might see faith connect with work in the armed forces. So that was very eye-opening and challenging, but it was a high spot just from the point of view of getting new information and having my experience expanded. And then the final one was a surprising one, perhaps, but I was asked to prepare a 4-minute segment to be included in the MHA service on MHA Sunday just a couple of weeks ago, June the 14th. And that was on MHA Sunday, and obviously in this particular year when MHA had to acknowledge that there had been 400 deaths in MHA homes, mostly of residents, but also including some staff. So the MHA Sunday online service became also a very moving memorial service. So it had multiple purposes this year. And to make a contribution to that in this most peculiar of years was really genuinely a privilege, as well as quite a hard thing to do, to both craft the words to make the contribution. That took a while, and also to keep it within 4 minutes. I think I managed 4.5 minutes, but it was genuinely a privilege to be involved.
And what did you discover that surprised you during your year as Vice President?
I hadn't expected to enjoy the Conservative Party conference. I've been a member of the Labour Party for over 30 years, and I've never been to any party conference. But I really wanted to enjoy going to one or other, whichever was allocated to me. And it wasn't obviously being a Labour Party member. It wasn't for the conservatism, but I just enjoyed meeting Conservative MP. We went as an ecumenical group, as I'm sure you're aware, and we prepared for it well. And we didn't know who we would meet, but it was nice to meet some Conservative MPs who were just honest with us about their Christianity, and quite upfront in saying to us, "You'll probably disagree with most of what I'm going to say, but nevertheless, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. This is how I think about it as a Christian." And they were very, very frank, because they said, we're able to be open with you. We know you're not trying to catch us out. You're not going to nip off and report it to some newspaper, kind of inappropriately. So we can be open with you. And they were. And it was very refreshing to have that kind of conversation. So that was a surprise, unexpected. The other unexpected thing is, I think, about the sheer scale of requests, formal and informal, for comment. Just the speed with which sometimes some of these requests are asked for, and the care that has to go into the wording of each statement. So the scale of that did surprise me during the year. But that's a good thing, because it shows that, well, either people think that the church's voice is still important, or it is important that the church, and the church is, try and pitch in when political matters are being discussed, because the danger is that they'll quickly be passed on or passed through or commented upon without the churches getting a chance to throw some important insights into.
This is one of the strangest times in recent history, and the pandemic will clearly have had a massive impact on your year in office, won't it?
Well, it split it really into Barbara and I have talked about it a year, 2 parts. It's not quite 2 halves, because it's been 3 or 4. We had 8 months of our year, and that was dominated by politics in Britain through Brexit and then the general election. And then suddenly we were into pandemic and not able to visit. And so there's no doubt that the last 3 or 4 months have been consumed, obviously, by the pandemic, but also has changed the dynamic of our year, so that we've done so many recordings for various purposes. So in some cases, we've been able to still visit virtually or be involved online in some way with the places we were intending or we had planned to visit. But equally, some of those have just had to go by the board. So it's been a very, very odd year.
You're very shortly going to be taking up your new role as Principal of the Queen's Foundation in Birmingham, and I should imagine your experiences as Vice President are going to be really useful in putting that new work into context.
Well, the fact that I've been appointed as Principal of Queen's is a genuine surprise for me. But I think some of the particular insights from the Vice Presidency will stand me in very good stead for Queen's, because Queen's is an ecumenical foundation, and that's really, really important. And it's broadly ecumenical. It's not just Methodist Anglican. It has links with lots of other traditions, particularly in black churches in the UK. It has a centre for black theology. And given all that's been happening in the last month or so, which has focused on the Black Lives Matter movement, Queen's will be very, very important. And I bring into that role anyway many years of kind of wrestling with issues about decolonising the theological education curriculum. But with a new sense, I think, that I've got to be challenged as a white person about my own white privilege, which I need to take full responsibility for in working out how that will inform the work I'll do along with my colleagues at Queen's to make Queen's a really, really important centre for diversity in theological education.
We will, of course, be talking to the new President and Vice President, the Reverend Richard Teal and Carolyn Lawrence, in next week's podcast. The conference is being live streamed from Saturday afternoon, and highlights of this year's conference include the President and Vice President's address, the reception into Full Connection, the evangelism and growth strategy, and news about 3Generate. And you can find the full schedule and how to watch this year's Methodist conference on the Methodist Church website.
It's a real joy now to welcome Pastor Mario from Chile, who on watching and sharing in our services wanted to send us his greeting, his prayers.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Saludos a las congregaciones metodistas en Inglaterra de Winslow, Steer y Hanford.
Hi, I hope you're well. Greetings to the English Methodist congregations of Wilmslow, Stile and Handforth.
Wilmslow Methodist Church of the Manchester and Stockport district has found itself a partner church in Chile, as the minister Katie Thomas tells us.
I was a mission partner for 6 years in Chile from 1996 to 2002, and I've visited a number of times since. I was asked to go and take somebody's wedding in January, and since then I've had frequent contacts, with members from churches in Chile, and my churches have heard lots about Chile during the last 8 years. And one of the things with the video service that we've done is people were just so delighted to actually meet people I've talked about, to see images and to hear something about their context today. I think it's really important for us to have that sense of that we're part of the wider church, that we're part of a world church. We can often, focus on our own, specific issues, but to have that context that we're part of something much bigger gives us perspective. And I think people always are interested to hear about what's happening in other places.
And how have the members of your church in Wilmslow taken to their partner church in Chile?
I've had so many positive emails and messages about how lovely it was to see, the people in Chile that they've heard so much about. And again, that sense of being part of the wider world church family. For, Chileans, the Chilean Methodist Church feel very strongly about our connectionalism and our interconnectedness. And I share our video services with members of my old church in Chile, and they say that even though they can't understand it because most of them don't speak English, they get the sense of it. They're able to, experience the hymns and know when we're reading from scripture and what the passage is, and they're receiving a lot by having that sense of sharing with us. And I will try and keep sharing news from the church in Chile as that changes.
What would you say to other churches that are considering twinning?
I guess one of the things, just to encourage other people to maybe have a go at doing the same thing. If they have a link or they have church family members in different parts of the world. One of the joys of the video type services that we might not be very confident at inviting people to come along to worship, but people have very simply been able to send the link, of the service to friends and family all around the world who are joining and sharing with us in worship. And so just encourage people maybe to invite some of those people to share in the service and share something of their experience of the COVID crisis as a way of strengthening, supporting and praying for one another. There's some challenges. I know it was very hard for Pastor Mario because, Wi-Fi reception wasn't very good. It was all done on his phone. And there were translation issues. And we ended up having to dub in order to fits so much into those minutes on screen. But just really encourage people. This is a huge opportunity to do something that we would not be able to do normally, perhaps, in our church services. Reach out and invite people and share, because it's such a joy, isn't it, to be part of a worldwide family of faith, God's love, with no borders, no boundaries, and just a delight in learning from people around the world, to share with them in their journey and to deepen our prayer, relationship with them.
Like many groups of musicians, the National Methodist Youth Brass Band has been unable to meet together, never mind perform or tour. And last week they were meant to be attending a concert in Lichfield, but instead they decided to hold a virtual concert. As one of the band's chaplains, Sarah Hambley, explains.
It just kind of came about in that we have been meeting over Zoom over like the time that we've been in lockdown, as a band, to just have catch-ups and things, and do a bit of like prayer and worship nights and various things like that, and a quiz every week. But we kind of just decided that we were really missing meeting together in person, and we'd already missed one band weekend earlier this year because of COVID, so we missed that in April, and we knew we were missing another one, and we've cancelled our summer tour, so we thought, well, we may as well get together and do some things. Parts.
Nathan Fowler is another chaplain with the band. Nathan, how did you create the online concert? It's not as easy as just having one big Zoom meeting, is it?
Zoom really doesn't work well when you want to do something together. So to bring the virtual concerts together, the conductor Simon created tracks that we could play along to and record the parts independently, and then Simon has put things all together so that though we recorded things separately for the virtual concert, we are all playing together.
If young people want to join the band, or maybe somebody might want you to come along and perform maybe when things are back to normal, how do they find out more?
We are always looking for new members, anyone between the ages of 13 and 21 who plays a brass or percussion instrument. So if they are interested, they can contact us through our social media. And also looking for churches to go to. We have a long list of churches that we often visit or are on our waiting list and things, but we're always looking to add to that. So again, contact through social media. Our email address is also on the social media, which is admin@nmybb.org.uk.
And if you'd like to hear more of that concert, you can find it on their website by searching for the National Methodist Youth Brass Band. John Hindson from Nottingham had already completed 350 miles of a walk to Kenya raising money for Christian Aid when he decided not to stop, and now, rather strangely, has almost reached John O'Groats. By the time he gets there, hopefully on Monday, John will have walked 837 miles, the distance from Land's End. John is, of course, undertaking this long-distance walk virtually by walking around 6 miles each day close to his home. He's now raising money for the Methodist charity, the Fund for Human Need, and I caught up with John virtually somewhere near Dunbleath in Scotland as I asked him why he took up the challenge.
I decided to join in the walk because I'm fit, and I used to have asthma so badly I used to have the emergency doctor when I was in my teens, that I've always kept fit, never had a car, and thought, well, there are lots of people in this world who aren't fit and haven't got the wherewithal to do what I'm still able to do at 77, and it seemed incorrect if I didn't at least try and use some of that ability to encourage other people who are struggling. You know, I've always been involved with Christian Aid locally, but now I'm raising money for the Fund for Human Need, which does a fantastic job in this country, giving short-term grants to people who are really struggling. But I feel I want to increase their profile if I can.
So how do you decide where to walk to keep things interesting each day?
Well, I look out the door, look out the window every morning and think, should I go 6 miles away from my home, or shall I go close to home today because the weather's not good? Out of the 13 weeks that I've been doing it, 10 weeks at least will have been good. So I've been able to keep quite a way, up to 6 miles away from my home those days, because I've got to get back, and I don't normally want to walk more than 13 miles in a day because that's enough for me.
Do you ever have days when you think, no, I'm going to have today off?
Well, I still go because it's an average of just over 9 miles every day. And if I miss a day, then it's very hard to catch up. I'm living near the edge, but I've always wanted to live near the edge. That's why I increased it from 350 to 500 to 556 and 837. If I'm in danger of doing it too quickly, then I don't feel that there's a challenge, and I always like a challenge.
And how are you going to celebrate when you reach John O'Groats?
Well, I'll be celebrating in my head. I don't know whether I'll be doing anything other than just being a little bit euphoric that I've done it. I don't think I'll finish till at least the day before. Probably the 29th of June is when I'll finish it. But I'll celebrate in my head. I'll be grateful to God for my health, and I'll be grateful that at least one or two other people might benefit, not because of me, but because of the health that I've been given.
And if you'd like to support John's walk and help him raise money for the Fund for Human Need, you can find the details at justgiving.com/fundraising/John Heinsohn. Last year, Barbara Glaston and Clive Marsh, the President and Vice President of the Methodist Conference, visited Zimbabwe with All We Can, the Methodist Development and Relief Charity. Here they share with us their prayer for Zimbabwe.
Oh, loving God, we pray for the people of this land, Zimbabwe. We pray for your blessing on them as they struggle to find good water and a livelihood and learn to flourish here and to own their land and to be part of this country. And we pray that you will remind us in the church in Britain that we are part of the human family, and as Methodists our influence and our connection is for the world and around the world. And we pray that there will be a blessing on this place and that you will encourage us to keep a world perspective and never forget that we are mutually dependent in your kingdom. Amen.
Creative, generous, loving God, you help us to remain resilient and faithful even when times are hard. And amongst the people I have met, I have seen your presence by your Spirit in Christ in concrete terms amongst people here. We pray that in their faithfulness they will continue to seek you, and as they find you through their faithfulness and your presence with them, that their resilience turns into new, fresh hope. Be with them, we pray, in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Thank you for listening to the Methodist Podcast. If you have any suggestions of topics that you'd like us to cover, then do let us know. And we'd also appreciate any of your prayers that you'd like to record for the podcast. From myself, Mike Ivat, goodbye.